Ethical Perspectives on the News is produced by the Interreligious Council of Linn County, which is solely responsible for its content. The views and opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily reflect those of the staff and management of KCRG TV9.
Good morning and welcome to Ethical Perspectives on the News. My name is Scott Samuelson and I'm a professor of philosophy at Kirkwood Community College on the Iowa City campus. Have you heard about MOOCs? Even though the New York Times declared 2012 the year of the MOOC, in my experience the acronym MOOC still conjures not so much in everyone's minds, but in education circles it stirs up a lot of emotions. MOOC stands for Massive Open Online Course, essentially classes on the internet that can be taken by large numbers of people. But each word of the acronym raises questions. Massive, how many people? 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000? Open. Open to whom? Everybody, those who pay, those with certain qualifications. Online. But in what way? Interactive, lectures. And finally, course. Do you get credit? How is the work graded? Who's in charge? Pundits like David Brooks and Thomas Friedman have gushed that MOOCs are the wave of the future and promise to democratize education, making courses once exclusive to certain Ivy League schools easily available to any and all. But many in the education world worry that MOOCs are a Trojan horse, a way for big business to work its way further into public education and make money off cut-rate schooling. What role, if any, should MOOCs play in our educational institutions? We have a great panel for our discussion today. To my left, Barry Butler, the Executive Vice President at the University of Iowa. Thanks for being on.
Thank you for having me.
Erica Lawrence, an Associate Professor of Psychology at the University. Thanks for being on, Erica.
Thank you.
And at the end, Frank Durham, Associate Professor of Journalism and Mass Communication at the University of Iowa. Thanks for being on, Frank.
It's a pleasure. Thanks.
Well, I think we should maybe start by trying to get a little bit of clarity on what we're talking about with these MOOCs. Barry, maybe you can weigh in on this. What exactly is a MOOC and what's it supposed to be doing?
Well, you defined it there to start the program, which opens up a lot of questions, obviously. The size of the course, the availability, whether it's for credit, how much it costs, if it's free. But in general, when people refer to MOOCs, they are referring to a very specific subset of what we're referring to as online education. And online education has been going on for decades. But the MOOC is one that really refers to, generally speaking, large audiences. In some cases 10,000, maybe even 100,000 students. Generally they're referring to it as for free, basically an online course that's free. The third part, of course, is online, as you mentioned earlier, delivered in a lot of different ways, but basically on the internet.
Right. And
that's what's getting people excited. And a course, as you said, was it for credit, is not for credit. Most of the time when you're referring to a MOOC, you're referring to something that does not have credit, although some of the organizations are trying to determine ways to give credit, to evaluate and to give credit.
Right.
But in general, it's a very small subset of a much larger mode of delivery of education, and that is online education.
And I understand that you taught an early form of online education in
That's right.
1980, is that right?
That's right. 1980, I was a graduate student, and I was a substitute online instructor, so I wasn't doing it on a regular basis. But first of all, it goes to show you that it's been going on for decades. This is not something that just happened yesterday.
Right, but this wasn't quite massive. Right?
It wasn't massive. There were 6 students, I think, in another city that were interested in taking it. They were working professionals, and that's another thing we can talk about later, is that quite often online education is attractive to those who are working or really place-bound, so to speak. They can't get to a campus. In my case, I said I had 6 students. They were working professionals. They were working on their master's degrees, and I would say the technology, without going into great detail, was not quite what it is today in terms of the internet, but it was okay.
Right.
You know, it allowed us to communicate our knowledge to the 6 people who were 150 miles away.
Right. Well, Erica, let's bring you into the conversation. Do MOOCs have a role to play at, say, the University of Iowa in higher education?
I think they do. I think that there's a concern that they're sort of going to replace brick and mortar universities or education, and I don't think that's the case. But I think that they can be a complement to what we do well with students who are in residence. So one example that is being developed at the University of Iowa is a MOOC being developed by Chris Merrill of the International Writing Program, and that's I think, a great opportunity for us to take something that we're known for at the university and that we do so well and be able to reach students all over the country, all over the world, who couldn't access the International Writing Program at the University of Iowa otherwise. So I think that there are some real opportunities in real ways that the University of Iowa can be involved in MOOCs in these sort of special ways.
Right. Well, and Frank, let's get you in here too. Massive open online courses. I mean, how many of these are out there? What actually is happening right now in the educational world with regard to these things?
I think principally a lot of speculation. There's a lot of capital on the table. There are private concerns. There's a consortium led by Harvard, correct me if I miss people, but Harvard, MIT, Stanford, other elite universities operating their own MOOC development programs with a budget from Harvard of something like $60 million. MOOCs are not cheap to produce. They require studios, much like this television studio, and to achieve a certain professional production value. There have been experiments. San Jose State tried to a MOOC-like course to teach, I think, remedial math, and it was undersubscribed. Was it San Diego State? Mm-hmm. Withdrew a course in information sciences or a similar sort of discipline for its poor fit with their curriculum. I think, as Erica mentioned, there's a lot of sort of consideration of what a MOOC could be, but our real interest in it is not so much what MOOCs are at the University of Iowa, but how we can address our primary concern, which is teaching and learning, pedagogy. Mm-hmm. And I think often MOOCs are presented as a solution to an economically strapped university system in one state or another. They're certainly a technological fix, but maybe they're good for education, maybe they're not. I think the whole country's kind of looking at that.
Yeah, well, let's maybe deal with that issue then. I mean, it seems to me that, when you think about the idea of a great teacher, Chris Merrill, someone who has something to offer, offering it widely to the world, particularly if it's freely available, that seems like a wonderful thing and like what the promise of, this new technology brings with it. On the flip side, it seems like there's a kind of worry that is that really what getting an education is about? You mentioned the old brick and mortar kind of thing, and I think still for a lot of people they feel like, well, you need to actually have contact with a professor. You need to have feedback in a real way with someone who knows what they're doing. And while it might be great to have access to a great professor from Harvard, a great professor from the University of Iowa, that's kind of like buying a book from those people. It's not really like getting an education from those people. And if that starts to replace education for people who are strapped for cash, are they really getting a real education, or are they just getting a kind of ersatz education or one nice thing, but not really something that goes deeper in the way we would expect an education to do?
Yeah, and we talked about that on the way up here to the studio, is that you think about the textbook or the book written by the faculty member, an expert in some area, that sort of is the early version, in essence, of what we're calling.
MOOCs were originally called books.
Books, yeah, they were books. And they take a lot of effort. If you've ever written a book, it's rare that they make anything off of them. They put thousands of hours into writing a book, and then that's distributed out into libraries and other bookstores and other places, so individuals can check one out or buy it and learn from what's in that book. Well, in essence, that's this is taking the internet and using it somewhat in the same manner and being able to deliver the knowledge from the individual. In both examples, it all starts with the individual who is the expert on a particular area, whether it's mathematics, philosophy, you name it, and somehow through some mechanism getting that knowledge out to many people. And we see that in a lot of different ways. Some people like to do online videos, some will do lectures, but at the end of the day, it's a different version of a book, maybe more interactive in some cases if you have that type of interaction. I will share one quick example on this subject, is sort of what is the value of the person in front of the students. And just earlier this week when I was teaching my class, I showed my class a video of a particular wind energy device. And it's a very professionally done video. The class was interested. 4 or 5 minute video. You could tell they were learning from that video. That's a good use of technology in the class.
Right.
But I then showed them a model of it, a working model, put it up on the table and sat it down and made it work.
Right.
And as a faculty member, you can see the difference in learning. You can see them just engage in that working model, looking at it, asking questions, touching it in some cases. And it's just one example, but that sort of touches on sort of the role of the faculty member, the instructor in front of the students delivering the material. But we are seeing a lot of people who are using content, bringing it into their courses, and that's adding to all of our abilities to deliver a high quality education, which is what we're all about.
Right, so it seems like we're adding a tool, but is there something more that MOOCs are, is there a bigger role than just one more tool, like a video or a book that I could assign? Here's a MOOC of a lecture, you know, or that you can look at that could be part of, let's say, accredited course. Or,
well, from an economic standpoint, I think that MOOCs can address the end of the baby boom. I mean, many state university systems are overbuilt. Our curricula can be connected to each other through consortia. The University of Iowa belongs to the CIC, and for example, there are universities in that consortium that offer foreign language courses that other schools don't offer, and students from these different schools can collaboratively can take these courses together and achieve a sort of economy of scale that might not sustain the course on its own campus. So I think that they're business-related or capital-related reasons for approaching this that MOOCs can satisfy.
but I mean, then don't we start to have questions like, if I'm taking Urdu on a MOOC, because my school doesn't offer it, I mean, how am I getting feedback on my pronunciation, on my written things? I mean, it's great to have some online resource, but am I really having a real education?
I think I might correct myself. I think those courses are probably more likely to be traditional distance learning courses that are taught at a scale where there's an instructor interacting with the students, and perhaps not on the massive scale of a MOOC.
I think a related issue that you're sort of getting at is not just how do we offer them, but that different students learn in different ways. And I think that when there are discussions about sort of sweeping changes to online learning or to using MOOCs, I think we really need to think about the pedagogical issues that are relevant. And some students may learn very well through online learning, and some students may really need that in-person contact. And the way that we teach those courses needs to be completely different. It's not as simple as putting a camera in the room when you're giving a lecture. You have to completely create a new course in a different medium. And so these pedagogical issues really need to be thought about in terms of how we teach and how students best learn.
Yeah, and I mean, I do think those are pretty serious issues, because while there may be people, and it seems like the younger generation in particular interacts well online, or at least many people do, and that can be a powerful thing for them. At the same time, the technology itself is such, you know, like when I'm online, I'm sort of flitting around, looking at a whole bunch of different things. Maybe I'll have 2 screens up. You know, I don't know that it's always the dialed-in sort of attention that one wants in a real educational setting. Now, I'm not saying that one can't achieve that, and I suppose that there are, but when I've read about certain online courses, including MOOCs, have, you know, sometimes terrible completion rates when they've actually been signed up for credit, then one starts to wonder, is it possible really to make this work at a large scale? It might be that it's, like I said, one little nice tool, but can it really work as a full education for most people? Maybe some, but I'm wondering if the technology is such, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, the MOOC, again, trying to speak to the MOOC, you've obviously read about the enrollments in a lot of the courses where you might start with, let's say, 10,000 students enrolled on day one, and at the end of the semester you might only have 500 left. I think if any one of us taught a course that way, maybe not 9,000, but let's say we start with 100 students and we had 5 left in our classroom at the end of the semester, I think we'd be answering to someone, you know, including ourselves, as to what happened. Why did 95% of the students drop the course? That happens in the online world, and for a number of reasons. you've got people who are coming in and just sort of exploring. They're kind of interested, and they're from all over the world, basically. You might have a person just interested in the topic, perhaps, interested in taking it from an American university, just from the credibility of American higher education.
Right.
Then you have those serious individuals who actually will finish the course.
Right.
And they're few and far between, as you know.
Right.
But there are some who finish. And then you say, well, is that of value, and at what cost? And that's the question.
Right.
We go out of our way to make sure that we can deliver the best education at the lowest price possible, and the University of Iowa is well regarded for that. For many years now, we've been considered a best buy. But it's a ratio. It's high quality at low cost. It's not just low cost,
Right.
and it's not just high quality. It's high quality at low cost. And that ratio we've maintained for a number of years. When you throw in the mix of a MOOC, you are basically, the cost is pretty obvious. It's zero to the individual, but the question is, what's the quality? And as my fellow panelists here mentioned earlier, you simply can't produce a high quality course for free. It doesn't work that way. So somebody has to pay for it. And so then the question is, how much do you put into it? How much do you invest in delivering? The privates have been able to do that, but it's a little different in a public institution.
Right. Well, I am kind of interested in the economics of it, because it does seem like part of the promise of the thing is that somehow it will give people who wouldn't otherwise have access to education access to that education. But then it seems to me that then we do have to start wondering about how that's going to be happening.
There's a kind of paradox in the notion of an online community. I spent the summer on a task force at the university studying MOOCs and working on a draft policy about them for the provost's office. And one of the suggested themes, remembering that there's no extended practice of successful MOOC production, one of the suggested themes is that people in online communities do best when they gather in coffee shops and talk to each other about what's going on in the MOOC. Well, Sunday evening, I went to the Slater dorm and met the journalism learning community, all 20 of them, and had a study session with my students who are in my history class for the exam that they're going to take on Thursday. And we do that. I mean, we're already accomplishing this sort of socialization of education that creates a community. And I think that one of the reasons for the high attrition rate among the early exercises in producing MOOCs is just that people are isolated, that being an autodidact is not really the way that most people learn most efficiently, either online or not. And when we talk about bricks and mortar, we're often talking about dorm rooms where 19 and 20-year-old students stay up late arguing about philosophy and really working things out.
Right. Well, but there are private interests as well in massive open online courses. And it seems to me, if we're saying that, well, they cost a lot to produce, well, not that many people necessarily
What's the
complete
business model?
Right. I mean, you know, I guess I worry, like from a perspective of education, you could say, okay, well, they have a role to play, and we should think about what that role is, and we should worry about, you know, good pedagogy and how we're going to use that. But from a business perspective, I might be thinking, well, I get a lot of people to enroll. You know, I might have a lot of overhead at first, but, you know, then I've got this course up and running, and it can be a moneymaker. And maybe if, you know, a lot of people drop out, well, I got the money already. I mean, you see what I'm saying? That it does seem like there's a worry that if private industry does get into this business, that there will be, education may suffer, and people may be taken advantage of at some level.
I think one of the things we have to realize is that we currently have many different types of higher education. Putting MOOCs aside, we already have a number of different models in place in this country. We have community colleges. We have public institutions, public research institutions, public teaching institutions. We have private colleges, very expensive private colleges, and we have for-profit colleges and universities around the country.
Right.
Places like the University of Phoenix and others. So we already have sort of this menu of higher education available. I would say this is perhaps one more to add to the list. The difference here is that this is not a degree granting institution This is a mechanism for delivering courses, sort of serving as a third party in delivering courses. So you might teach a course and a student somewhere else might take it and eventually try to get credit for that at their institution. Right now there are efforts to try to monetize, so to speak, to make this thing work business-wise. I mean, there's some very smart people involved in it. The idea of taking it for free doesn't seem like that would work if you just, you know, to be a world-class economist to figure that out. But there are ways to make it work, and I think people are working on those. For example, if you're taking one of the online courses now and you want to try to get credit for it, there are ways to go into a testing center and take a formal test that's proctored, and you can get credit. Then the question is does that credit transfer to our university or other universities? You can also pay to have perhaps your own private tutor. So there are different ways for the groups who are trying to make this work to actually make money out of it along the way. I think that's to be determined what happens. We don't know for sure, but there are thoughts out there.
But Eric, I mean, it seems to me one fear that faculty sometimes have, I don't know if it's rational or irrational, is that somehow we're going to end up getting replaced by MOOCs, or at least seriously downsized by them, or turned into something like glorified TAs for a few MOOCs that go on. I know at the San Jose State, I believe it was, this was part of the fear of some of the people in my discipline was, well, here's this great course taught by this Harvard political philosopher, and why not make this the course, and then we will hire a few adjuncts to grade
San
papers.
Jose State's philosophy department wrote an open letter saying no.
Right, we're saying, look, you know, we have a good course now. We don't need this to come in, and all really this is doing is further challenging an already strapped faculty trying to do their best. Are there those legitimate concerns that some faculty have?
Some faculty have them. I don't know that that's really going to happen. I mean, that's not a concern that I have. And so I can say that. I think that it's something that people are excited about, but I don't think it's going to suddenly replace the teaching that we do, or suddenly replace the need for teachers teaching students in the room at specific universities. I mean, I understand the concern, but I guess I don't necessarily share it. I just can't imagine that would happen. There's too much, there are too many reasons why students need to come to a university or come to a college and learn and interact with their professors. And
well, right. I mean, I don't know. I agree with you there, but I think the fear is that while that need will still be there, it will be being served in ways that perhaps don't fulfill that need, but that nonetheless cut costs for some.
But
I don't know.
The threat is not from the technology in this case. It's from it's from the Great Recession. It's from shrinking state university budgets, from state legislatures all across the country, and the universities have learned to do more with less, hiring adjunct faculty in lieu of the traditional numbers and percentages of tenure track and tenured faculty. That's not a MOOC issue. That's a different sort of economic model that states are in various cases working out of or not.
If I could add to this, sorry. Yeah, I think going beyond the MOOCs, if you look at the positive impact it's had, just the whole idea that there's something coming that's different. We've seen in the last several years an incredible increase in the number of faculty members interested in using new technologies, new learning environments. We've established a number of what are called tile classrooms that create different learning environments for the students. It has a technology-rich environment, but it's still a faculty member in front of a group of students. They may be delivering it differently. They may be doing what's called the flipped classroom or hybrid, where they're asking students to do different preparation, you know, perhaps watch a lecture in advance, then come in and work. And so I've seen a lot of that in the last several years. I would attribute a lot of that to the fact that there's so much going on around the world in this area that people pick up on it.
Right, but you know, so people talk about this flipped classroom where you watch the lecture outside of class and then you work with the students, you know, on the homework, so to speak, in class. Is there a way in which, in thinking about things like online courses and that has sort of shown that perhaps some of our educational models have been falling short. I mean, I think about it, a lot of universities, it has been traditional to have something like a mini MOOC, so to speak, in the classroom itself. You have a large lecture hall filled with people, someone up there lecturing to them. They may as well be, so to speak, at home in front of their computer. You know, distance learning, so to speak, starts in the second row or something at that point. And then you have the TAs who then come in and, you know, do the sort of more close work of actual teaching and learning. I mean, are we sort of learning that we really do need this close contact? I mean, our MOOCs sort of ironically showing us that in fact what education is a lot more than just listening to a lecture in a big hall.
Yeah, again, as we said earlier, there's a lot of different ways to learn.
Right.
And some people can learn really well by sitting down with a book and reading it cover to cover. Others can't do that. That's just the way we're hardwired, I guess. And so as we look at learning styles, I think we have to just be open to the fact that people learn a lot of different ways, and I think that's important.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Erica.
I was going to say what I think is what's been nice about this ongoing discussion about MOOCs is that it's really led to a broader discussion about what are the best ways to teach our students and to teach different kinds of students, and that we as faculty need to think about the best ways to teach and to really pay attention to different ways that different students learn. And MOOCs may be one way to teach and one way for students to learn, but you know, there are a number of different ways to do that, and this is part of that discussion.
Frank, what were you
I was just going to say that one proposed model for MOOCs to work was not to compete with a 4-year bachelor's degree or a traditional liberal arts education or the standard sort of model of our product, but to offer competencies where students could test out based on life skills and the experiences that they've had, and to accrue credits toward badges, which themselves would be credentials that would be presented directly to employers. And this seems to sort of step on the community college and the university footprint at the same time. But again, these are all sort of speculative approaches, and we're still waiting to see what a MOOC might be.
Right. Well, we only have about a minute left, but Barry, I mean, what role are MOOCs going to be playing at the University of Iowa and in Iowa's education?
Well, as Erica said earlier, we are looking at just some very specialized areas where we're really good. She mentioned the international writing program, things like those are areas where we really want to take a look at and put our resources into, and I think we'll do well in those. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't look into the future and say 10 years from now, but like any technology, something will come out of it over time that will be retained. Not everything will.
Right. It seems like with technology, there's usually a lot of enthusiasm at first, kind of tapers off, and then finds its place, hopefully a good one. Well, I'm afraid that we have to call it quits because we've run out of time, but I'd really like to thank the panel for an interesting discussion, and we hope that the conversation we've been having here is one that you continue to have in your homes. We know that education is an important subject for us all to be thinking about. So thank you, and we'll see you next time on Ethical Perspectives on the News. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.